Hello, and howdy doody. We've been talking about livability, but what's that other big concept that's really, really important? It's sustainability. Remember, sustainability is being able to keep doing the same thing into the future. So if our places are livable but they're not sustainable, then we're still stuffed, aren't we? Because we need to be able to live the way we live into the future. We've got this beautiful life, but everything around us is being destroyed. Well, eventually, it won't be beautiful anymore. It'll be gross. Ooh, 3 learning goals. How exciting. 1, you're going to know what makes a place sustainable. Yep, remember, being able to keep doing what you're doing in the future. And you're going to know what an ecological footprint is. Finally, you're going to be able to create a graph. You're not going to interpret a graph this time. I'm going to give you a data table, and you, my friends, are going to turn that into a graph using graph paper, if you got graph paper. Maths should be done using graph paper. I remember in class seeing you guys doing maths on lined paper. Like, hello, it needs to be graph paper. Anyway, you can just print graph paper out if you want. Moving on. Okay, what makes a place sustainable? If it's got access to education, yeah, think about that. It wouldn't be sustainable if there was no education, because then the children that people had in that place wouldn't be able to get educated, they wouldn't be able to work, they wouldn't be able to be productive members of society. So education is needed for a place to be sustainable. I've got a pointer now. There needs to be affordable housing. If the housing's not affordable, then only super rich people will be able to live there. But guess what? We need people who aren't super rich to do all the jobs that non-super rich people do. Like, we need people to make coffees, work at the supermarket, work at the swimming pool, work at the library. So we need housing for all levels of wealth. If it's only really if the housing is only for rich people, you can't have a proper society, because you need low paid workers to work in societies, and they can't afford those rich houses. You need biodiversity. Biodiversity is the number of different species, not the number of different animals within a species. How many different species? Yeah. So if you don't have biodiversity, then you've killed all the nature, and that's not sustainable, because we need nature to survive. For example, if you kill the birds, if you kill the bees pollinate the vegetables and the fruit. If the bees are dead, they can't pollinate the vegetables and the fruit, then there's no fruit and vegetables, then there's no us, because that's what we eat. We need unpolluted air. If we have polluted air, we'll get all kinds of respiratory and lung illnesses, and we won't be able to survive. So we need to keep a watch on air pollution. What's the number one cause of air pollution in your local area? It's probably petrol-powered cars. So let's move on to electric cars. But they're not cheap, but they should be. Finally, renewable energy use. The way that we produce energy at the moment is not sustainable. If we burnt all of the oil and coal on Earth, we would all die. The planet would heat up so much that human life would not be sustainable. So, and what's already happening, people are moving away from fossil fuels, moving to renewable energy. Really good example of this is in a lot of the new houses, possibly in the suburbs you live in, heaps of them are built with solar panels in the first place. I live in an older house, and so we had to get our solar panels put in, which cost heaps of money, but heaps of the new houses in Australia are built with solar panels in the first place. Solar panels on your house does not mean that you are completely renewable energy, though, because most people's houses, even if they've got solar panels on them, that's not enough for all of their energy use. They still get some stuff from the grid. And of course, you still power your lawnmower and your car with petrol. So anyway, more is better than less, though. Let's have a look at a few diagrams that talk about sustainability. So here we can see 5 things that help make a place sustainable. Living architecture. Now, we don't really see this much in Melbourne. There's buildings with like gardens on the roof, buildings with gardens on the walls. There are community gardens in Melbourne, so if you don't have enough space in your backyard to have a vegetable garden, you can hire for very little money a little plot. I'm a mad vegetable gardener, and I get so much enjoyment from it. Not only is the food fantastic, I'm teaching my kids about where food comes from. It's an enjoyable pastime. It's quite relaxing. Oh, that was 11 points. Anyway, tree planting. Yeah, lots of trees. So planting trees in cities does a lot of different things. It actually reduces air pollution because some of the air pollution gets stuck in the trees, and so you don't have to breathe it in. Not good for the tree, but it's good for your lungs. Also, trees reduce the heat. You often get these things called heat, what are they called? Heat oases, like parts of cities get really, really hot because the ground's just all concrete, yeah? When it really hot days, ground heats up, stays really hot. Trees reduce the heat because they block sunlight. And also trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So they breathe in the bad stuff and they breathe out the good stuff. Green streets, urban food, yeah, growing food in public spaces, awesome idea. And water sensitive urban design. Water sensitive urban design is something that we have at our school. Go and speak to Glenn about it. He'll talk your ear off. Yeah. Here's another one. Here's some more things that make a place sustainable. So reducing waste, conserving water, producing food locally, yeah, rather than buying some weird fruit that was flown in from South America and therefore you are to blame for all of the pollution from the plane. Just eat the fruit that's seasonal in your area. And so on. Charging stations, electric vehicle charging stations, we're starting to see more and more of them in Australia. We need to see a lot more, but anyway. And why do we care about walkability? Because if suburbs are walkable, then people will stay in their suburbs and they won't spend all this fossil fuel energy driving somewhere else. Yeah, keep it local, yo. Okay, final slide of notes. The ecological footprint. Basically your ecological footprint is an amount of land. So you add up everything that is your lifestyle and it's expressed as a number, an area of land, hectares. Okay, so you add up all the food that you eat. Oh, I've got a diagram showing you that in a sec, so we'll move on. So for the whole world to be sustainable, i.e. not using more than the amount that the earth produces, the average footprint with human population as it is needs to be less than 1.7 hectares per person. So if every person on earth had an ecological footprint of 1.7 hectares or less, we'd be fine. Here's the bad news. The average Australian ecological footprint per person is, drum roll please, mate, it's 8.8. It's like 6 times more than what it should be. So Australia is very bad for ecological footprint. We're quite harsh on the environment. It's no surprise rich countries have a way worse footprint. So what makes up your footprint? Here's a cool diagram. All of the fish that you eat, all of the land that's used for the city or the house that you live on, the majority of your your ecological footprint comes from the food that you eat. So if you eat lots of meat, then you'll have a big footprint. If you're a vegan like me, yeah, that's right, I'm better than you. Just joking. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian, then you have a much lower ecological footprint. Let's compare countries, shall we? There we go. So this is not measuring ecological footprint in hectares. This is measuring ecological footprint in worlds. So what you'd need this number to be for the world to be sustainable is 1 or less. Yeah. If everybody lived like India, we'd use 0.7 Earths, so we'd be fine. Anything over 1, we're stuffed. Yeah. The whole world's average is 1.7 Earths. But how many Earths do we have? We have 1. So if your ecological footprint expressed in worlds is over 1, then you are naughty. Look at Australia's, it's like really bad, 4.1. So we're using 4 times as many of the Earth's resources than is sustainable. Yeah, so I've showed you 2 different ways to measure ecological footprint. Remember, it's a measurement of land. First one I showed you was hectares. The average needs to be below 1.7 hectares per person, but Australia's is 8.8. The other way to measure it is this one here. It's how many worlds, if everybody lived like you in certain countries, how many Earths will we need? And the number for that needs to be below 1, but the only country on here is India, 0.7. The world average is 1.7, which means if to be sustainable, we'd need another 0.7 of a planet, but we ain't got another 0.7 of a planet, so we need to sort our lives out. I know a lot of this environmental stuff is depressing, but look at it like this. The environmental catastrophes that are already happening and that are coming and that are going to be worse are simply very large, complicated problems. Humans are designed to solve problems, and we've solved pretty much every other problem that we've put our mind to. So there's no reason why we can't solve the environmental crisis that's coming as well, okay? Don't freak out. Humans are amazing. That does not mean we can all sit back and just wait for Elon Musk to invent something that's going to fix the planet. We need to help fix the planet, yeah? So even if we do come up with some technology that's like sucks carbon out of the air or whatever, we're going to need that, and we're going to need to reduce our own pollution. So the two things are going to work at once. So yes, I have faith in humanity. I think we can solve this problem, but it needs to be solved with both strategies. Find ways to reduce the pollution that we've already done and reduce the pollution that we're creating every day. Okay, go vegan. Right, let's do an activity. Here is a data table. There are 5 categories and then an overall rating, names of cities, countries, and so on. I'm not going to give you too many hints. I want to make you have to do this yourself. Okay, you're going to make a graph but only showing the overall. So you're just going to graph that stuff. You've got to have a border, axis labels, legend, title, source. I already wrote that down. I'm not clever. So you've got to graph all 10 cities and their overall rating in a graph. I don't want you to use your iPad. I want you to do it with pen and paper. I want you to do it on graph paper if you can. If you don't have graph paper, print out graph paper and use that. I don't want to see people doing graphs using freehand or even a ruler. Nah, graph paper. And then at the end, I want you to write 2 or 3 sentences explaining what we can learn from looking at your graph. I know you can do it. Let's watch a video all about sustainability. Yeah.
This is Peter. Peter is a teacher. He's sure that he leads a sustainable life. He buys organic products at the supermarket, rides to work on a bike, and his lights use green electricity. But is that really sustainable living? Let's go back to the beginning. Even in the 18th century, people were interested in the environment. For example, Carl von Carlowitz realized that you shouldn't cut down more trees than will grow again to replace them. So he had recognized the basic principle of sustainability. Nowadays, sustainability is seen as a global concept. This can be explained with the help of the 3-pillar model. The model is based on environmental, economic, and social considerations, which must always be regarded as belonging together. First, the environmental pillar. It includes, among other things, climate protection, which is widespread, protection of resources, and biodiversity. Also, food should be grown organically. That is, we should stop using pesticides. And farm animals should be given fodder produced on the farm. We must use natural resources more sparingly too. One of them is petrol, which we need for our cars. But sooner or later this resource will be exhausted, so there'll be no fuel for the cars. This is why we're looking very hard for an environmentally friendly alternative, so that future generations will have environmentally friendly cars. Electric ones, for example. The next pillar is the economy, that is, business and industry. In future, at the supermarket, Peter should only find produce that's in season in his region, like strawberries in summer. Mangoes from Brazil or bananas from Colombia and Ecuador arrive by air from a very long way away. Transporting them causes a lot of pollution. The third pillar of sustainability is the social element. Goals here include, for example, better education and training opportunities, equal rights for men and women, fighting poverty, and prosperity for the whole of humanity. One beverage manufacturer from an industrialized country has quite a bit of catching up to do here. It repeatedly takes over the wells of villages in India because it needs the water to make its products there. That isn't very sustainable. Peter doesn't think so either. After all, at least a little water should be left in the wells for the Indian population. So Peter tries to do justice to the three-pillar model. When he buys organically grown produce, when he goes to work on his bike, and by using green power from wind turbines, he really does live sustainably. But be careful. A lot of companies exploit consumers' environmental awareness. Not all the products that claim to be from fair trade or organic farming are sustainable. It's up to consumers to be well informed about the products they're consuming.
You thought we're only watching one video. Oh, you're wrong. We're watching two. This one's called On Earth. Finally, a reflection activity. The topic, livability and sustainability. I want one sentence that summarises that idea, one phrase, which is just a part of a sentence, and one word. So you're coming up with a sentence and then you're shortening it and you're shortening it. Yay, and that is it. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for taking part in today's lesson, and always keep a room.